Our keynote speaker at Synod was T.C. Moore, and he and his wife co-pastor Roots Moravian Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, as Karen had mentioned. He is also the author of the book Forged, A New Kind of Family. And in 3 separate sessions, T.C. spoke on the story we received today in our gospel reading. So a few things we might notice in the reading today. First is that Jesus knows what rejection is like. He returns to his hometown with his disciples, and after some really good ministry, after successful ministry, Jesus was teaching and healing, and he encountered many people whose faith was strong, whose faith had made them well. But back home, instead of faith, Jesus finds an atmosphere of unbelief, and he could do no deeds of power in that place. One of the things we might ask ourselves is this. We might wonder, is it possible to get in the way of what Jesus wants to do in our world? What atmosphere, what church culture facilitates the mission of Jesus Christ? What kinds of church culture create an atmosphere of unbelief? T.C. Moore noted that Jesus was forming his disciples to become a particular kind of community, a sent community. Jesus was intentional about the village he was creating, and T.C. offered this comparison of what he called a museum village and a missional village. A museum village is perhaps what Jesus encountered in Nazareth that day long ago. Now, I have nothing against museums. They are treasures we can learn from, of course, but T.C. suggests that characteristics of a museum village in a church culture create an atmosphere where there is fear, where people are trapped in the past. It's a village that rejects innovation. As compared to a missional village, according to T.C. Moore, one that has prayer as its foundation, one that moves in close proximity to the suffering, a village that empowers people, seeing people as the gifts in the church. Some who encountered Jesus long ago were indeed afraid of his teachings and what he was doing in their midst. Remember those who heard him teach with great authority, and they were amazed until his words became challenging, until they hit home, and they ran him out of town. There were others we read about in the Gospels who dismissed Jesus altogether. Still others who heard him and believed, and the word took root and grew and yielded an abundant harvest. At Synod, delegates were encouraged to consider the current culture in our own ministry settings. Where is there fear? Where are there strong ties to tradition or resistance to innovation? I invite us today to consider in our own unique lives of discipleship, where is there fear in your own heart when it comes to following Jesus? Where do we have strong ties to past practices or behaviors or habits? Where in our own hearts and in our own lives of discipleship do we resist change and the transformation that Jesus wants to do in our lives? Are there aspects in our discipleship or in our ministry as a congregation that could be getting in the way of what Jesus is wanting to do in our midst? Museums preserve and protect what they have. That's their focus, whereas missions move to where the need is. Jesus was intentional about forming a sent community, a missional village. Those first disciples were sent 2 by 2 under the authority of Jesus, able to preach and to restore and to heal people. Next, TC spoke about forged family, as Karen mentioned, and how our culture has had a certain way of defining family for a long time. Middle-class suburban families of the 1950s is really a thing of the past. And in contrast, TC talked about forged family, a new kind of family, intentional kinship, connected in common mission rather than biology or marriage. This is really nothing new to the Moravian Church if you think about how the 18th century Moravians were structured, right? Jesus was intentional about forging family as he ushered in the kingdom of heaven. He sent his disciples out 2 by 2, and wherever they were welcomed, he said, stay, get to know people. Enjoy table fellowship. God's family is a family where there are literally thousands of mothers and fathers and aunties and uncles and siblings. And this is the gift the church has to offer the world. This sense of relationship with one another, such that no matter where we go or who we are or what we've done, we are never alone. And as part of the family of God, we are part of that missional village, a sent people. Think for a moment about people you know, or groups of people who are isolated or lonely or feeling like they don't belong, rejected by society or family. We know these are precisely the ones who Jesus would choose to dine with in his day, right? Got me thinking about our setting here. Who is it we might be intentional about forging family with our congregation? How might we set the table? What would it look like? Imagine this literally, to host meals, not just for our own fellowship together, but with intention to eat with our neighbors. Picture that with me for just a moment. Some long table set down there in the family center that extends the length of that room, a banquet table perhaps. We're out in the parking lot. Neighbors walking across the street, everyone a seat at the table, enjoying a meal for the purpose of relationship, table fellowship. I know myself, I right away start thinking about logistics and reasons why that could not or should not happen. That could be a nightmare, right? But could we consider perhaps Jesus might just do something rather incredible, some deed of power through an act like that? How might we consider how we are intentional about forging family beyond the family that already gathers here? In our final reflection from TC on this text, it concerned Jesus' intention to form his disciples as peacemakers and to find others who are peace promoters. Jesus instructed his disciples to stay where they were welcome, to leave where they were not welcome. In Matthew's version of this story, Jesus tells his followers to go into the villages and bring peace. And he said that peace is either going to rest on the people you encounter and it will be multiplied, or that peace will return to you. But whether or not it's received, bring it. Jesus said, take your peace. In Jeremiah chapter 29, the prophet tells people then, in a specific time and place, to seek the peace of the city in which they live, to work for the well-being of that city, for in its well-being you will find your well-being. What if that phrase went like this? Seek the welfare of the neighborhood where you are at, for in its welfare you will find yours. To truly love our neighbor is to care about what matters to our neighbors and to act on their behalf. Bishop Michael Johnson led our closing worship at Synod with a challenge. We are indeed part of the intentional village that Jesus set out to create. We are part of this sent community of believers entrusted with Christ's mission. To whom will we go? Who is God wanting to bring into the family, and in what ways are we seeking the peace of the city or the neighborhood to which we are sent? It's your call, and it's our call. Let's pray.